We talk about the resurgence of Detroit, development downtown, growing population, strengthening neighborhoods. But the key that ties much of this together is public safety and keeping the people who live and work in the city of Detroit safe. The Detroit Police Department has been making strides using technology to cut down on crime. It has also targeted gang violence in certain precincts. One of the featured speakers here at the policy conference is Detroit Police Chief James Craig. We welcome him back to MiWeek. It's good to see you, Chief.
Thank you.
And also Nolan Finley joins us back here from moderating his panel to help in the discussion here. Chief, it's good to see you. Some of the crime stats that have come out recently said that robberies were down, carjackings were down, homicides up slightly. What do you attribute the shift in numbers to?
Well, you know, this is the third year going where we've seen a steady decline in crime. Certainly, I would have liked overall crime to be much steeper. You know, we set very modest goals, talking about 5% overall crime. We're at that this year. But the big winner is robbery. I mean, we're talking about 3 years going, double-digit reduction in robbery all of last year. And so I'm pleased with that. And really, that's the one crime when you talk about what drives fear in neighborhoods, because it's a crime where the suspect and victim are generally not acquainted. In a crime of homicide, generally there's some kind of acquaintance relationship, so that makes a difference. Doesn't mean that it doesn't create and drive fear like non-fatal shootings, but robbery really is the one that we can see the fruits of our labor.
So, in terms of fruits of your labor, what specifically do you believe that you've done as a department in this last year that has changed those numbers?
Well, you know, it didn't just start last year. You know, I like to go back when I first got here now 3.5 years ago. You know, I placed a lot of focus on the men and women who wear the uniform. It's no secret that the morale was down with the police officers. They had 10% of their pay taken away. The fact that police stations were closed at 5 o'clock, 911 calls that took an hour to be answered, a clearance rate in homicide at about 11% as it was reported, and then the morale of the community. The community had lost total confidence. And so you had these two very important factors at play, and that affects crime. And so when we started working on, you know, the morale issues and then reestablishing a relationship with our community, that's when we started to see a dramatic shift. And it's continuing. Now, when you look at the trends across the country, it's no secret that homicides are starting to go up. Non-fatal shootings are going up in some cities more than others. And we're seeing a slight uptick, but I think we have something in place, you know, with our ceasefire that's addressing the violence. We just moved over to the west side of the city late last year or the last 6 months of the year. So we are confident that that's going to start taking hold, because we did see reductions on the east side. And so our work continues in that area. It's not an easy task, but it's not just a police task. It's more than us. You know, I've recently talked a lot about the other partners in the law enforcement or criminal justice family. I'm talking about our prosecutors, and I'm talking about our judges. Those are key components. It's not just police. We're the most visible, and certainly when things don't work out well and crime starts going up, the first thing people look at, well, what about the police? But see, I draw on my experiences from cities like Cincinnati and Los Angeles, where I spent a lot of time, and there was a time when LA had this uptick. We're talking about 2,000 murders a year. But then when things started to shift, you got to ask, well, why did that happen and what sustained it? It wasn't just the police. The courts played a role, the prosecutors played a role, and that has sustained their low crime reductions.
So are the courts and prosecutors here doing their jobs?
You know, I'm not going to criticize. I think that our prosecutors are working hard. I think the issue in the prosecutor's office, frankly, is understaffing. I think Prosecutor Worthy will tell you that she needs more prosecutors to address the crimes that we have. She's going to need more. But that said, I need more police officers. But I'm going to have to get this job done. I mean, we have fewer police officers today than, say, when I first started 3.5 years ago.
Well, the mayor in his speech the other night talked about repopulating the police academy, getting new recruits in. Are you able to bring people into the police academy at the rate to replace those who are retiring from the force? And are you able to recruit folks for the academy who sort of look like the population of the city? Are you getting the diversity you'd like to see?
Well, the diversity is a challenge. We do, and I got to tell you, I got to give a lot of credit to our staff who has done yeoman's work to go out and fill the academy. We have 200 in the academy right now. We're actively recruiting. In fact, what's interesting about our department in comparison to other departments across the state, I don't know who wrote the article in the Detroit News, but they talked about the challenge that police departments were experiencing in recruitment. In Detroit, we are recruiting and we're filling our classes up. So that's really good news for the city, good news for the department. And when you compare us to other cities across the country, we're still hiring, but we have an attrition rate. We're averaging about 15 officers a month. And so trying to keep up, that's the real challenge. I mean, we're hiring, but you don't realize the full effect of a new hire for at least a year and a half.
Are you able to have training for these new hires so they're engaging with the community perhaps in a different way? We've seen in the last 2 or 3 years in this country engagement with communities and with police, and the tensions have been terrible and there have been some terrible incidents. With that comes an increased knowledge of how to talk to the community, how to deal with the community, and then adding technology with that. Now, body cameras that a lot of police officers are wearing, you have a pilot program with that. How has that been working, and has that changed any kind of interaction that officers have had with the community members?
Well, let me just start by saying that the Detroit Police Department is a model for community policing. I mean, you talk about what you've heard about what's going on in many of these other cities. I guess I would ask the question, have we seen that in Detroit? I mean, that doesn't mean we're going to have some tension. I mean, anytime you talk about making arrests, that's not always a pleasant experience. But when you compare us to other cities, we are a model to follow. We're not having the unrest. And part of it is because of relationships that we've established. We have our neighborhood police officers who are deployed throughout this city, in the neighborhoods, on the ground, building those kind of relationships that do matter.
So are you seeing then more people from the neighborhoods that when crime does happen, that they are coming to police and talking with you and helping out in investigations?
I would say yes, it's better. It's certainly better than when I arrived here. I talked about the fact that there was an absence of trust because people felt like, you know, the Detroit Police Department's not responding to our emergency calls for service. We have no relationship, and that's changed. Again, I go back to our neighborhood police officers who really have done phenomenal work. You go in any neighborhood, and as soon as you mention an MPO, people get very excited. And so I'm encouraged that as we move forward, we're in the process of even deploying more MPOs across the city. And that's very important going forward.
Have you reached the point where you're ready to declare Detroit a safe city?
I'm ready to say that Detroit is a safer city. I think that we still have work to do. It's not, LA didn't turn overnight, New York didn't turn overnight, but let's just say this, and I'll keep saying this, police are one component. We're the most visible, but we need our other partners to be locked in with us on this fight to eradicate violence.
So when you talk about supporting the police and supporting law enforcement efforts, have you noticed any impact from the lighting improvements throughout the city and the blight removal? Are those key to crime reduction as well?
I think they've played a key role. I think when you talk about our Green Light Project, huge success in eradicating violence around those locations that have typically been magnets. Of course, lighting makes a difference. I mean, dark places are usually places where crime flourishes. And so when you talk about abandon and you talk about blight, the broken windows concept, that those areas that look unsafe are unsafe. And so all of these things have been a contributing factor to making Detroit a safe city. But when we talk about Detroit's turnaround, which is happening, I mean, again, I look back, I didn't have the advantage of knowing what it was like here 5 and even 10 years ago, but I can tell you about the 3.5 years, tremendous turnaround.
All right, Chief James Craig, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.